finally, that was all 4 of the current Archons. I'll inevitably see you again next year when Fontaine releases, if I am still into this game by then.
Well, I did make a promise. That's right, over a year actually, I'm back with this Genshin series where I draw the Archons in my style. I started this way back in my channel's life, drawing each Archon individually and then redrawing them along with Nahida. If you haven't seen that video, I would recommend to, but at the end of that video, I said that I would draw the Fontaine Archon whenever they were revealed. And now here we are. This part of the video is going to be spoiler free, so I won't talk too in depth about the Archon quest, but mostly about what I think of the character and Fontaine. And no, I'm not redrawing the 4 other pieces I did. I don't want to do that. Please don't make me do that. I might redraw them all when we eventually get to Snezhnaya or something. Cause, let's face it, even though I'm not super involved in the Genshin Impact community anymore, I've kind of been converted by Honkai Star Rail, this is something I do want to finish. But let's not focus on that. We got an Archon to draw. So the reason why it took me a while to draw this character was because I was waiting for her gameplay trailer to come out in order to keep the pattern with the other illustrations where I draw the Archon in a pose that matches one of their attacks. I was kind of debating which of her normal attacks I wanted to draw, but in the end I ended up with this pose where she switches modes, so to speak. It's a very fancy pose and quite easy to draw, which is good because it gave me room to focus on the insane amount of details. You have probably guessed it, but the newest Archon is Lady Furina, and she is delightful. When we first see her as this prideful diva who's all silly and can find herself a little over her head, I definitely couldn't help but like her. She's so fun, and even when she gets really scared and anxious, I always feel so sorry for her because it's clear she's so stressed and she just needs a hug, the poor thing. Her gameplay is also really interesting, being a mix of a support and healer, but mainly being a support for the other healers is really cool. It would have been cool to have her in a team with my Noelle, since Noelle is one of my mains. I unfortunately lost my 50-50, and for the first time, I lost it to Chi-Chi. I never had Chi-Chi before this and never lost my 50-50 to her, so I was more impressed than disappointed. Like I said, Furina has 2 modes in her gameplay, one where she summons companions that can attack, and one where she summons a companion that heals. With that, she gets 2 different designs, one where she has short hair and black in her outfit, and one where she has long hair and white in her outfit. I decided to draw the latter for this, and since it's part of her attack, I wanted to draw the healing companion, which was pretty hard to get the reference for. Like I said, her design is insanely detailed, just like any other Genshin character, but I'm going to ignore that fact to actually just talk about the design as a whole, which I do really love. It's obviously based on Rococo fashion, but with mixes of both masculine and feminine shapes. For the most part, her outfit is a suit, but she has this big ribbon thing in the back which gives the same silhouette as a Rococo dress, and I really love how androgynous it makes her look. Another thing I love is incorporating the jellyfish hairstyle, something that's obviously much more modern and trendy, but really works for the god of water and the sea. Although it is mostly white, which tends to drive me crazy when it comes to rendering. That's more of a me thing though. Her eyes are also really fun. Not to be overtly different, but different enough where it's clear she's meant to have heterochromia makes total sense for her personality. Now for a bit more about the drawing process. Although this did take me a while, it wasn't as hard drawing a Genshin character this time as it was in the past. This is partially due to me omitting some details, which I think is okay because even though I do love most Genshin drawings or Genshin designs, they do tend to feel very over-designed. I actually didn't know this before the line art, but I found out when actually looking back at the footage for the other 4th speed paints that I've increased the size I use for my line art over the years. For those drawings, I stuck to 8 or 10 for the size, but now I'm using like 25 on average. It probably made sense to use a thinner size for a design like this, but I decided to keep going with the size I was already using. And of course, the colors took me forever to place. So many clipping layers. Luckily, I merge all of the clipping layers when I'm done laying down the colors. I know a lot of artists will keep them separate and render each section individually, but I am one who likes to render everything as a whole with 1 to 2 colors. Much less layers that way, especially for something like this. For the background, I knew I wanted to draw her on a stage with a spotlight, and at first was going to add gears, but because I was going to be drawing a bunch of water for this, I figured that would just clear everything. Of course, I hadn't fully rendered it yet at this point, but I had added the spotlight, which was what I needed to start rendering. This one is the only one out of the 4 to have a completely different color for the lighting source than the shadows. Because Fontaine has a just as much gold as it has blue, in my opinion. I thought it was appropriate. Plus, it helps from everything feeling too washed out in blue, like what happened with Nahida in green. The rendering went pretty well, except for, like I said, the hair. Always with the white hair. I'm actually still not happy with how her hair turned out in this piece. Even the fade to blue was washed out. Another thing I noticed, I think I drew her feet too big. That might have been bad. Rendering everything else went okay, the eyes were a bit tricky, and of course, I tried making sure that the gold elements were shiny. I don't have much else to say about the rendering because it was pretty much the same as I usually do, and I didn't actually focus too much on the background since I wanted to have more focus on the foreground, but I did try my best to render the water guy. I don't know the name, but it's the water guy. Like I said, this ended up being pretty tricky because of my lack of reference, and I'm just not that good at shading water. But after a little bit, I was able to figure it out, and I decided to line it with my sketching brush. And now for the foreground, which ended up taking quite a bit of time. The water splashes, I believe I used a water effect brush but made it a flat color so the rendering would blend in more. And the biggest thing I wanted to add were bubbles, since that's a big pointer in her alt. Luckily I had a brush perfect for that. I also found this material with a bubble-like pattern, which ended up working quite well. I added in some sparkles where the spotlight was, and even tried out a bounce light effect on Furina, which I liked quite a bit. And that was pretty much it for her. Overall, she was pretty fun to draw, and she looks alright next to the others, even though it does look a little different style-wise. Of course, there's no avoiding that. I also wanted to talk a little bit about my opinions on Fontaine and the story quest. Admittedly, I haven't finished all of it, but I have gotten spoilers, and what I've seen is really good, and it looks super cool. I also do quite like the area of Fontaine. I will admit the surface of Fontaine is kind of underwhelming. It's not super interesting. It's not like a repeat of Mondstadt or anything. Like, it definitely feels unique, and I think like the greens of it feel a lot more blue there, which makes sense. They kind of did that with Inazuma too, but yeah, it's fine. The underwater, of course, I think is where they put a lot more focus on, because it's like a whole new thing, underwater exploring. So I think that's cool, even though I do think some of the mechanics are a little strange. They're a little strange, just a little bit. But yeah. And like I said, I've already talked about Furina. I might in the future, because I really want to draw some fan art for New Villette, who is really cool. I think he's my favorite Fontaine character. He's so cool. Sad little dragon boy. I want to give him a hug too. I want to give both of these guys a hug. They deserve it. But yeah, that's pretty much it, all that I have for this video. If you liked it, be sure to Yeah, you might be a bit confused. It's not the end of the video, because I lied. This isn't just fan art of Canon Furina, it's also a fan design video for my own Genshin Impact AU Demon Impact. Right after the video where I redrew all the Genshin fan art I made this one where I drew all the Archons, but if they were demons, based on their Archon names, who were named after actual demons. You should definitely give that video a watch, because I go over a lot of lore in that video. That's going to be important for this one, but for a quick recap, here's what they all look like, and basically most of them turned into demons around when the calamity happened or after. They've all turned against Celestia and are looking to find a way to get rid of humans who they see as pawns of Celestia. And interestingly enough, we actually found out what Furina's Archon name was way back in Sumeru. I just forgot because I'm dumb. I am kind of glad I waited though, because the story for this region got real interesting real quick. Also, this is the part of the video that has quite a bit of spoilers, so if you don't want to know what happens in the Archon quest yet, maybe skip this part of the video. But anyway, yeah, this isn't actually our Hydra Archon. This is, and you might be thinking, like I did, that looks like the same person, but that is in fact the real Focalor, and this is just a human that Focalor had pretending to be the Archon. She didn't even know she was in the Archon. Like, what the hell? Why would you do that to my girl? I haven't finished the full Archon quest. Maybe there's a good reason why. Found that out like halfway through making the last artwork, which kind of sucked, but after thinking about it, I was actually super excited about this because honestly, I didn't really have that many ideas for Furina and how to make her just as interesting as the others. But when this was revealed, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. What's better for this demon than to make Focalor the puppet master and Furina the puppet? I got to work with the designs, plural, starting with Focalor. Finding information for her kind of ended up being similar with how it went with Barbados, where I found more information about other things relating to Focalor, but here's some of the stuff I found. Focalor is depicted in the form of a man with the griffin's wings, kills men, drowns them, and overthrows warships. But if commanded by the conjurer, he will not harm any man or thing. This is the symbol of Focalor, and when finding stuff about extra French demons, I found this. Morioch, I'm so sorry if I'm not saying that right, is a bizarre and wicked demon from French folklore, unique to the region of Brittany. He is particularly dangerous and named individual of the water horse demons found in many cultures around the world. Favored games of Morioch, I think, include drowning victims who ride on his back, which was said to be able to stretch near infinitely, allowing the demon to carry multiple riders to their doom, laughing while doing so. There were a lot of other stuff relating to water horses as well, so basically I knew that I had to add a water horse in the final illustration somewhere. Now with all of this in mind, this was the rough draft that I made. As you can see, I based a lot of it off of the actual Focalor's design, but much more angular and sharp. I had a hard time with the bottom half, since there's not really much there in the canon design anyway. At first, I wanted to add in something griffin-like with her legs, so that would be like bird legs, but I couldn't find a way to get that to look good. So I went for giving her some legs that fade to black, inky water, which will make sense when we get to the lore section, and added in the griffin elements in her wings with the water wings. Something I also decided doing, both because if the design might have looked a little busy, and also kind of purely out of cool of rule. I had her split hair transition into the water wings. I'm not sure if it comes across that way in the final drawing, but hopefully it does, because I think that's a cool aspect. In her dress, I decided to add in some elements from the symbol of Focalor. These are the swirls and this little diagonal line thing on her coat, much like I did with Barbados. Another thing that I thought would be cool is turning her little ahoge, which is pretty recognizable, into her horn, since every demon needs at least one. But I even decided to have it swirl like her hair. The diamond crown was a last minute touch, but I quite like the look of it. It kind of matches Furina's hat. And finally for her face, one thing I definitely knew I wanted to do was give her some sort of Phantom of the Opera style mask, and this ended up being a dripping black inky water mask. I think this is one of my favorite parts of the design. I just really like it, and it also matches her legs. Since she has heterochromia in her canon look, I also decided to give her that here by making one eye an X and another a swirl. I really like this. It also kind of references what I did with my demon designs, and lastly, I kept her skin a bluish gray. Now for Furina, I basically kept her the same, just simplifying and added references to Focalor in her clothes. The biggest thing was her face. Since she's a mechanical puppet, I wanted to make her skin gray and shiny, but for the face, I made it resemble a drama mask with the comedy and sorrow and big blue eyes. Now that I had both of their designs, I think I'll go over a little bit of the story. So in this version, Focalor was an Oceanite before the previous Hydro Archon made her the new Archon, but she was already corrupted from the start. I'm not sure of the whole lore, but to tie this in with the Calamity, I thought that maybe she was an Oceanite that lived where Conria was placed, and during the Calamity, her waters were polluted with the blood of the dead. If not Conria, if that doesn't make sense, then probably somewhere else where war happened and then blood spilled, same thing happens. This corrupted her psyche and only became worse when she gained a humanoid form, fearing that one day her blood would spill in the water. At some point, she was also discovered a part of what Celestia was hiding, and feared that the humans would turn on her and kill her since she sees them as pawns. But she decided to turn against them first. She discovered that when she kills a human with her hydro powers, it turns the water black. So she conducted a plan to slowly kill off the people of Fontaine. The whole water rising thing isn't actually her doing, but she's taking it as an opportunity to keep the people distracted thinking about it. This polluted water that she creates is poisonous to Fontaine people, and if they touch it, they'll be consumed by the water and completely dissolved, being claimed by Fauchelevent. The more people she collects, the more the waters of Fontaine turn black. She does all these murders in secret though, and even though the water is obviously changing, the people figure it's probably because of the prophecy. The more people she kills, the more she also changes physically, resulting in her look here. However, she needs someone to keep the people distracted and to help with her murders. That's where Furina comes in, who was probably a simple human that she was going to kill at first, but then thought of an idea. She turned Furina into her puppet, turning her into a cyborg creature with the tech that the other bots in Fontaine are made from, and altered her appearance to be similar to hers, which I imagine was and is very painful. To everyone else, though, she looks like the Furina in game, and when we arrive in Fontaine, it goes the same as before, where with everyone thinking that they still have a Hydra Archon and that there's no demons here, only climate change, everything's fine. But as we continue, we start to see her true form more and more, and she eventually leads us to Fauchelevent. I also think this would explain her fearful behavior, since she's terrified of what Fauchelevent would do to her if she proves to be unuseful. Not only that, but she knows if she gets rid of her, she'll probably choose someone else to be the new puppet, and she doesn't want anyone else to have to go through this. Out of all the demons, I feel like this one ended up being really the most evil. Everyone else was kind of bad, but it's mostly in line with their original character and even a little sympathetic. But Fauchelevent really did take a dark turn with this one. Now for the rest of the artwork. The composition of this one is pretty different, since I needed to have two characters and I didn't really want to just do a straight on shot like the others. I'll probably change that with the rest too when it probably comes time to redraw and probably redesign them. I decided to make it a worm's eye shot to help her feel large and intimidating, with Furina as a small little puppet. The design stayed pretty much the same with just a few tweaks, and I wanted this to be an underwater scene, but oh boy did I not realize how much I would not have fun with that. I procrastinated rendering the background with rendering the girls, but once I was done with those, I had to do the background. I tried my best with the horse, which I think just looks okay, and did a very messy job rendering the rest of the background. Luckily, most of it got covered up with the special effects. I think I didn't have a good time with this one because I drew it so soon after Furina, and I don't like working with water in art. It's not great. But overall, I think the rest of the artwork looks pretty good. I'd say my favorite part is probably just the designs themselves, which I can say are one of my favorites. I hope you all enjoyed the lineup. Sorry about lying earlier, but I figured it would just have been easier to put this all in one video. I'll probably do the same when I inevitably show the Natlan Archon. So far, I don't think they've really messed any of the Archons up, so let's see if they keep that up for the last two. Let me know what you think of these designs. Go check out my book Lost Hearts on Etsy and my other webcomics on Webtoon. You can also see my artworks on Instagram. And I will see you all in the next video. Bye!